I think it's clear President Trump is the right guy for the job because he did such a great job when he was there before. This is an attack on the guy who's fighting for us, who's fighting for the American people, fighting for this great country. And I think it only strengthens, hardens, and expands his support.
With fervor in his voice, Jim Jordan makes a monumental declaration, asserting unequivocally that President Trump is the rightful leader for the nation.
So that is a huge issue that has to be in the bill, or we should not reauthorize FISA. It has to be in there.
And certainly the evidence is piling up. All these, suspicious activity reports, the millions of dollars going to multiple members of the Biden family.
Mr. Weiss has full authority to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he feels it's necessary. That was your response, Attorney General, to Senator Grassley's question on March 1st, 2023. You just referenced it when Mr. Bishop was questioning you. Only problem is he'd already been turned down by the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, Mr. Graves.
60% of the American people think there's a double standard at the Justice Department. They think that because there is. And you can see that with what happens to Hunter Biden and, of course, what they've done to President Trump, not just 8 days ago with the arraignment and the indictment, but what they've done to him for 7 years.
Jim Jordan unveils the contents of 3 crucial letters, each painting a different narrative and shedding light on a tangled web of intrigue and deception.
The fundamental question is, if he already had the authority, why does he need the authority? I mean, that to me makes no sense, but that's exactly what he tried to say. Oh, no, he had it all along, but I still had to make him a special counsel. So I don't get it. The 3 letters they sent to us this summer, 2 to our committee, 1 to Senator Graham, tell 3 different stories. And the point I always make is the story who's been consistent has been the 2 whistleblowers. So the position we've taken is the reasonable Republican position, the common sense position. The Democrats have taken the default position, frankly. So I do think we're going to get a lot here. And really what we're saying, if we get this, Stuart, what Speaker McCarthy and Republicans want is let's spend less this year than we spent last year. So people see that. The scary thing for me is it's not just about the president going after President Trump. It's going after parents at school board meetings. If you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. If you're a journalist, for goodness sake, they went after Matt Taibbi. So that's the big overarching concern, is this double standard that the American people now see clearly and know that it exists.
Chairman Turner brought this forward yesterday. It's obviously something that I think we need to view as in a serious matter. I guess my first thought was, thank goodness President Trump started Space Force. When you hear about what they're talking, Jake Sullivan's going to brief, not me today, but he'll be briefing the top people on the Intel Committee and what's called the Gang of 8, the leaders in both the House and Senate. So I think they'll know more today after that briefing. But serious issue. But yesterday, primarily, as I spent most of the day yesterday trying to figure out this FISA law, which is up for reauthorization, and particularly the protections Americans need when the government, the United States government, the federal government is going to be looking at their data. We think you have to have a warrant before you do that. And so we're fighting to make sure that gets done over the next several weeks as part of this FISA reauthorization.
Delving into matters of national security, Jim Jordan paints a dire picture of the threats facing the country, urging swift and decisive action.
Think of the comparison in 4 years. We literally went from a secure border to no border. We went from safe streets to record levels we went from $2 gas to $3, $4, $5 gas. And maybe most importantly, we went from stable prices to record inflation. And I haven't even gotten into foreign policy, where we had in President Trump someone who projected strength and was respected around the world, to Joe Biden and Russia and Hezbollah attacking our best friend in the state of, and of course what China's, so that is what this is about. Elections are about a contrast and a comparison and about which side you're going to be. I think it's clear President Trump is the right guy for the job because he did such a great job when he was there before.
Amidst revelations of FBI misconduct, Jim Jordan demands accountability, insisting that the same standards be applied rigorously to uphold the integrity of the justice system.
This is the FBI that spied on the presidential campaign. This is the FBI that censored Americans. This is the FBI that said pro-life Catholics were extremists, and we're going to let them police themselves? No, you got to have the way our system works is there are separate and equal branches of government, and you can't just have the executive branch police themselves. You have to go to another branch of government, the judicial branch, to get a probable cause warrant. That happens all the time, every single day in this country. That is a standard we've had around since the place started. So let's make sure that same standard exists, particularly when we know that the FBI abused this process 278,000 times. They didn't follow their rules, improperly queried this database. So that is a huge issue that has to be in the bill, or we should not reauthorize FISA. It has to be in there.
Well, he's in a fight for second, I guess, because this, President Trump's going to win. I think he's going to win big. And I think, as he said at the rally today, this is not only going to send a message for New Hampshire and South Carolina, but I think a message for the whole country. I think he's going to be our nominee. More importantly, I think President Trump's going to be the next president. I leave that up to Ron DeSantis. He's a good man. I served with him in Congress. When we formed the Freedom Caucus, there were 9 of us, and he was part of the original 9. So I have nothing against him. I just know the right guy for the job is President Trump, and that's why I've been 110% behind him from the get-go.
In a startling revelation, Jim Jordan discusses the potential ramifications of a Georgia judge's decision on Trump's legal case, underscoring the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, she used taxpayer dollars to help Nathan Wade, who spent it in all kinds of ways, but he also used that money to go after President Trump, for goodness sake. So, yeah, I think she's compromised. And back up a second. She charged President Trump and 18 other people and was looking to charge 3 United States senators. She put this out, including the top Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And now we find out, and we're talking to this individual, now we find out there's a whistleblower in the Fulton County DA's office who says that Fani Willis also misspent federal funds. Wow. That's why we've subpoenaed Ms. Willis for information related to that and other issues. We want to know what's going on here, but she sure looks like she's been compromised in this entire ridiculous effort that she undertook several months ago.
Jim Jordan raises probing questions about Attorney General Garland's actions, questioning why the statute of limitations was allowed to lapse in critical cases.
Here's why the statute of limitations question is important, and Mr. Bishop was getting at just a few minutes ago. Here's why it's important. You let the statute of limitations lapse for 2014, 2015. Those were the years with the felony tax charges where Hunter Biden was getting income from Burisma. Here are 4 facts that I think are so important. Hunter Biden was put on the board of Burisma, made a lot of money, got paid a lot of money over those years, a couple $1 million. He wasn't qualified. Fact number 2, he wasn't qualified to be on the board of Burisma. Not my words, his words. He said he got on the board because of his last name. The brand, as Devin Archer said when he was under oath and we deposed him. Fact number 3, Burisma executives told Hunter Biden, we're under pressure, we need help. Fact number 4, Joe Biden goes to leverages our tax money, American people's tax money, to get the prosecutor fired who was applying the pressure. Interestingly enough, that fact is entirely consistent with what the confidential human source told the FBI, and they recorded in the 1023 form. The same form Mr. Wray didn't want to let this committee and the Congress see. That all happened. What I'm wondering is why you guys let the statute of limitations lapse for those tax years that dealt with Burisma income.
There's one more fact that's important, and that is that this investigation was being conducted by Mr. Weiss, an appointee of President Trump. You will, at the appropriate time, have the opportunity to ask Mr. Weiss that question, and he will no doubt address it in the public report that will be transmitted to the Congress. I don't know the answer to those questions.
Did they forget? Did the lawyers just let it, did they just oh, darn, we let it, were they careless?
I expect that won't be what he says, but because I promise...
You know that's not the case, because as Mr. Bishop pointed out, they had a tolling agreement.
With a keen eye for detail, Jim Jordan scrutinizes the decisions made by key figures, demanding transparency and accountability at every turn.
Their testimony has not wavered, and they were subjected to about 3 hours of cross-examination from Democrats in the Oversight Committee back in July. Never forget, on July 10th, David Weiss tells Senator Graham, I have not sought special counsel authority. Then on August 11th, the Attorney General announces that David Weiss will be a special counsel. What happened in those 32 days? What took place? The whistleblowers came forward with their testimony, and the plea deal that they were trying to sweep everything under the rug, the plea deal is declined by a judge who did her job. And that's why we got a special counsel. They were going to get away with all this, but for those 2 brave whistleblowers and that judge in Delaware who did her job.
Discussing the role of a special counsel, Jim Jordan emphasizes the importance of extending investigations to uncover the truth and deliver justice.
they talked to Hunter Biden's defense counsel and say, let's extend the statute of limitations. And then at some point, they made an intentional decision to say, we're going to let the statute of limitations lapse. And I want to know who decided that and why they did it.
Mr. Weiss was a supervisor of the investigation at that time and at all times. He made the appropriate decisions. You'll be able to ask him that question, and he will.
You know why they did it? Everyone knows why they did it. May not say it, but everyone knows why they did it. They didn't. Burisma, those tax years, that dealt with that involved the president. It's one thing to have a charge in Delaware. That doesn't involve the president of the United States. But Burisma, oh my, that goes right to the White House. We can't have that. And we can slow walk this thing along. We can even extend the statute of limitations, and then we can intentionally let it lapse. And we know this investigation was slow. Here's what everyone said. Shapley said, DOJ slow walked the investigation. Ziegler, slow walking in the approvals of everything. This happened at the Delaware's attorney's office and DOJ tax level. Mr. Sobocinski, the FBI agent, said, I would have liked to see things move faster. Ms. Holly said the same. Every witness we've talked to said this thing was slow walked, and we know why. It slow walked it long enough to let the statute of limitations run so they wouldn't have to get into Burisma.
Well, you would think, particularly when supposedly David Weiss goes, and this is testimony we've got, David Weiss goes to the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, and he declines to allow him to prosecute there. You would think the Attorney General would weigh in then, but it looks like he didn't. Now he's weighing in with the special counsel. The other thing I think is happening here in this third plan, I think the special counsel allows him to extend this out even further. So we'll see what that all means. David Weiss is scheduled to be in front of our committee on October 11th. They committed to have him come in front of our committee. I hope they will honor their commitment.
Jim Jordan outlines the forthcoming steps in the House GOP's investigation into Hunter Biden, promising relentless pursuit of the facts.
I don't think they're going to get any tax increases. The Speaker and Republicans, we are clear. We're not raising Americans' taxes. For goodness sake, they've already been hit with the worst tax ever under Joe Biden, the inflation tax. So the Democrats want to tax them more and make it worse? And look, I think Speaker McCarthy has handled this well. And I would just say this, who do you think is going to get a better deal for the American people? Joe Biden, who has screwed up everything he's touched, border, inflation, energy policy, crime, you name it, foreign policy, or Speaker McCarthy, who went 15 rounds and emerged as the Speaker of the House. I actually think Speaker McCarthy in these negotiations and Republicans are going to get something that makes sense for the American people. Well, we'll continue to pursue from the judiciary standpoint. We're really going to look into this plea agreement that was put together by the Justice Department. As I said in the hearing a few weeks ago when we had the whistleblowers, Mr. Shapley and Mr. Ziegler, come in and testify, I said then that the Department of Justice's story keeps changing. David Weiss told me in a letter on June 7th, I have complete authority to bring charges when I want, where I want, and whether I want to bring them at all. And then 23 days later, he sends me another letter and says, I want to expand on what I wrote. I can only bring charges in my own U.S. Attorney's District. Well, which is it, Mr. Weiss? You have full authority to bring them when, where, and whether, or just in your U.S. Attorney's District. So he's changed his story, but the whistleblowers haven't. And then this plea agreement that was put together that the judge said no to a week ago, I mean, I think that is hugely significant because they tried to hide information in the diversion part of the plea agreement instead of putting it in the plea agreement itself. And the judge caught them in what they were trying to do and said, time out, go figure this out. So we're looking to interview 11 people in the Justice Department who were part of that investigation and figure out what was really going on here and the sweetheart deal they tried to put together.
In a passionate defense of President Trump, Jim Jordan denounces any attempts at indictment as an assault on the champion of the American people and the nation's values.
I mean, it's political, it's election interference, and it's wrong, and I think the country knows it. I think the result of that's going to be, Maria, I think President Trump's strength and is only going to harden and frankly expand. We knew the polling numbers early last week were 54-17 in the Republican primary. President Trump's winning overwhelmingly. I bet those numbers go up. And the New York Times had him neck and neck with a even race with Joe Biden, and that's the New York Times. So you know that's going to go up as well because the country sees, all us normal folks, regular folks in flyover country see what the elite in D.C. don't, that this is an attack on the guy who's fighting for us, who's fighting for the American people, fighting for this great country. And I think it only strengthens, hardens, and expands his support. Well, the speaker has been clear. As the evidence begins to mount, if we need to go to that phase of the investigation, then we're going to do it. It's a decision that the entire conference has to make. And certainly the evidence is piling up. All these, suspicious activity reports, the millions of dollars going to multiple members of the Biden family. And then, of course, you have Devin Archer's testimony from earlier this past week, where he lays out how all this kind of fits together, and the brand itself, and then that meeting in Dubai. That's a lot of evidence. That's a lot of I think, compelling evidence. So if we have to go to an impeachment inquiry phase, the speaker has been very clear. That's where the House Republicans will go, and we'll continue to do the work on behalf of the American people. The work we are required to do, by the way, under the Constitution as part of our duty to do oversight of the executive branch. Well, I would say maybe this is one of the first statements Secretary Clinton's made that I actually agree with. I do think it's a concern. And it's a concern because when you couple the way, unfortunately, the way Joe Biden sort of conducts himself as president of the greatest country ever, and then you look at the policy, everything they've done is bad. Secure border to no border, record safe streets to record $2 gas to $5 gas, stable prices to record inflation, now viewed weak around the world and when it comes to foreign policy versus how we were viewed under President Trump. I don't know they've done anything right. And so when you couple all that with the age concern that Secretary Clinton raised, I do see why even Democrats are questioning Joe Biden and whether he should run.